This Starrcast show, just like all of our Starrcast shows, are available at adfreeshows.com.
1985, Matt Jackson is born.
Jeez.
You have 4 blessed years without your brother Nick.
Those are 4 great years. I'm just kidding.
But then Nick, 1989, and growing up in the high desert outside of Los Angeles, what were the Young Bucks like as kids? What did you do? What were you into? Sports, school? I know you had older sister, younger brother. What was family life in the Jackson family? Not the Jackson family, your Jackson family.
Well, it was always either basketball or wrestling. Those were the 2 loves that we always had as children. And at an early age, we realized we weren't going to grow to be 6'5", so being a basketball player probably wasn't the right option. So we figured wrestling would probably be the chance to succeed in, because you didn't have to be 6'5", but at the time you probably had an advantage, obviously, if you were, but we knew we had a better shot at that. So wrestling became what we wanted to do from day one, pretty much.
When I introduced Nick to wrestling, I was a Coliseum home video kid. I would go to Blockbuster home video, and every single tape I would watch on repeat. I remember the first thing I think I ever watched was WrestleMania 3. I remember Andre and Hulk, and then something about Hulk just captured my imagination, along with probably most of the people in this room, right, who are my age. And I introduced it to Nick, and I said, look, this is cool, you should watch this. And we would watch it together in our living room, and our younger brother, Malachi, who would later come, he would watch it with us. My older sister, DJ, just didn't understand, why do my brothers like this weird thing on TV? It was either Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or it was WWF. That's all we knew. And we would wrestle and grapple in the living room, and
we had all the toys too.
All the LJN toys and Hasbros. And
we would set up the ring and build cards, actually, with the wrestlers. Like, hey, this will be the main event tonight. It was always Hulk Hogan versus someone.
Yeah. And we would build custom sets for the shows.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I probably have pictures of that somewhere.
I remember one time my mom smelt smoke, and she ran into the room and she said, "There's something burning." Nick and I were having the first ever Inferno match with our little toys.
with our action figures. I remember that. That's
we
right.
set the ring on fire. My mom's like, "What are you doing?" So, but yeah, it was all we cared about and loved. And on top of all of that, we come from a Christian home where my mom and dad are Jesus freaks. So most of our childhood, I just remember being in a church, whether it was Wednesday night, Sunday morning.
But you know what, that's when it got tricky, because at that point it became like the Attitude Era. So our parents would see all this bad language on TV. So at one point they actually said, all right, we can't have this on our TV. You guys can't be watching this anymore. So they tried to cut it off for a minute.
I remember vividly why, what triggered my dad. I don't know what it was, but it was the episode after they screwed Brett, and Vince McMahon was on doing a promo or whatever, or he's talking with Jim Ross in an interview, and he kept saying, "Brett screwed Brett. He screwed him. He screwed him." And my dad said, "Enough of this screw word. Turn this junk off." And he's like, "Wrestling's banned in this household."
But we always found a way to sneak it back on television, and we would watch it, when they would go to sleep. And
Right.
So eventually, your dad came around to your love of wrestling.
Yes.
And in, was it 2001, built the ring in your backyard.
Correct.
Very famous story. Your dad,
Yeah.
without him, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
No.
even before that, though, we would do backyard wrestling matches on mattresses and
And anything you could get your hands on.
anything, and it was pretty dangerous. So our parents thought to themselves, if we could make it a little more safer than just this trampoline.
The problem was they banned us from wrestling out back because they would come home and they would see. I would have my friend Daniel in a pile driver, and there would be a makeshift table with drywall between two trash cans. What are you doing? And they would say, enough of this wrestling. It's banned again. So we would go to our friends' houses, and then we would do the same thing. And then their mom and dads would kick us out. And until finally it all culminated, we found a furniture store called Visions Furniture in Rancho Cucamonga. And in the back by the dumpster, they would put all the old furniture, the mattresses and stuff. And we were like, oh my God, this is like a gold mine. So we set up like a makeshift arena. And there was also an old broken down diesel truck that used to be for the deliveries. So we would dive off the top of the truck and do elbow drops and all this stuff until finally one day, like we spent the entire summer there one summer, until finally one day we walk up to our little arena and everything's just covered in ash. It was like there was a fire. So we're out there just almost like in tears, like, oh my God, our last hope is gone to ash. What the hell are we gonna do? And the guy comes running out, the owner of the store, presumably, and he's got a cell phone. He's going, I'm calling the cops. I always see you guys back here. I know this was you. So just like in a movie, we're like, oh, we panicked, and we just ran and jumped over the chain link fence and took off. And we were thinking like the cops are after us or something. So finally, that's when my dad was just like, we begged him. We said, can you help us, please? We just love wrestling so much. What can you do to help us with this? And he's like, you know what? I'm a general contractor. You can't really find the blueprint online about, how to build a wrestling ring, but I think I could use my education to kind of figure out, on the fly what we can do. So we went to Lowe's and we bought a bunch of lumber and he figured out how to weld the metal together with we got the custom turnbuckles and it took us what would you say a couple of weeks to build it.
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
And it was your sweet 16th birthday,
finally,
right?
my dad's deadline was like, I want to get this ring to you by your birthday and your sweet 16. So I remember being really sick that day. Like I had the flu, and my dad and Nick and Mal, they all worked outside all day. They're like, we got to get this done by the end of the day. And at nighttime, they dragged me out of bed, and like it was like they turned the lights on, and there was the ring, and my eyes lit up, and I said, oh my gosh! Like, can you imagine like being 16 years old and having your own professional wrestling ring? And it pretty much was.
Yep.
Like a custom-built professional wrestling ring.
But from that moment on, we didn't leave that ring.
No.
We would probably spend 8 hours in there every single day.
Yep.
Just learning, just falling, bumping.
And it was soft enough that you could take great bumps. And
it was that, or we were just so young and we didn't feel it at the time. But I remember we would actually practice top rope back bumps just because.
We would do drills. Climb up, fall on your back. Climb up for hours. Yeah. It's probably why I'm such a mess nowadays. But
Yeah, lower back pain. I wonder where that came from. So around this time, actually a little bit before this time, you guys met Dustin and Brandon Cutler, who would be lifelong friends to you guys and also partners in the backyard wrestling ring. And fast forwarding a little bit here, 2003, you came to the Rudo's Dojo for the very first time with Revolution Pro Wrestling, the SoCal one, not the UK one, but and you started taking classes there. Well, you walked into a class, you started doing standing shooting star presses and 450s when the drill was just to do like a 3/4 roll.
Like we had the backyard thing picked up, and locally we were like, I don't want to call us celebrities, but we were like local celebrities. Like all the kids at school knew we were the wrestlers, and all the neighborhood kids would come over and they kind of like looked up to us. It was almost like we had like a really small cult following around Rancho Cucamonga. So I developed this massive ego, thinking I was like the greatest backyard wrestler in the world, right? And we had also do shows at this place called the Anaheim Marketplace, where there is an actual old WCW ring.
Shout out to Martine Marin.
Shout out to Martine. And backyard wrestlers would get together and collect $250 and rent the ring out for a couple of hours. So essentially we had a backyard wrestling show hosted at the marketplace, and I ran into this guy, I call him Ryan Merch, who was actually in charge of the merchandise at Revolution Pro. And he's like, listen, if you want to get professionally trained, I know a place. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So he hooked me up with Ron Rivera and gave me his number, and I ended up calling him, and one day I show up at it's literally a ring in his backyard, so it's very similar to our setup.
Right, but you guys didn't have the chicken coop directly adjacent to the ring.
There was chicken coop in the ring, yes.
It was like you would sometimes bump out of the ring and then roll into chicken shit.
Yeah, Like, so I show up, massive ego. I don't shake anybody's hands, which in wrestling, that's a big no-no. Like, you're supposed to go and say hello to everybody. Instead, I show up late, mind you. I climb to the top rope, and I do a shooting star press off the top rope, land on my feet, and then I stick my hand out, and I go, hey, my name is, and my backyard name was Mr. BYWA. My name is Mr. BYWA. Nice to meet you. And all these, like, guys who have been in the business for a few years at least, like, they knew, like, this was, like, not cool.
You know who was there was Scorpio Sky.
Oh, there he is.
He was at the first session.
Yeah, he was there. And he was the only guy that was actually nice to me and didn't kick my ass.
I was too young at this time, so Matt would go to these training sessions, learn from those guys, and then he would come home and teach me and my younger brother, probably Brandon too.
Yeah.
Dustin would go with you to the training sessions
The
as
other
well.
Cutler brother who's no longer around.
But yeah, you would teach us. So you would go and train for 2-3 hours, then come home and train us for 2 to 3 hours each and every Saturday, I think it was, or something like that, right?
And one of the sessions you were talking about, I didn't realize you were actually there until recently. When
wow.
Super Dragon, I don't know if you guys know Super Dragon.
Was running class.
He was running the class, and I really wanted to impress Super Dragon because he was like the top guy in independent wrestling.
Yeah.
And he was running really basic, simple drills where he would have you shoot the guy into the corner, give him a clothesline or something. So when it was my turn, I would shoot the guy into the corner and do a tiger backflip off the guy's chest instead. Or you would set the guy down, hit the ropes, and he would say, drop an elbow. I would do a standing shooting star press.
So nothing's changed.
Exactly, yeah.
So it really pissed off Super Dragon, and to the point where, like, years later, he still had a grudge with us.
I mean, that's why it took long for you guys to get to PWG.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's why it took so long. And we didn't know it at the time until Joey Ryan smartened us up and told us the backstory.
Like, he hates you from like 5 years ago when you were like really arrogant. And I'm like, what? Yeah.
So after the training, you guys have your first match. You start working for Revolution Pro, but you also start high-risk wrestling in the high desert. And that was actually your first endeavor in running a professional wrestling organization. With the Cutler brothers, a lot of local SoCal guys. What were your goals in starting high-risk wrestling, and like where did you think it would take you?
Well, the main goals were literally just to wrestle. Like, there wasn't many indies at the time in SoCal that were running or just booking us in general. So we figured if we started running our own company, we could wrestle whenever we wanted because we had control in it. So that was the main reason, to try to get footage of us in an actual ring, to send out the footage to other promoters. So that was the main goal at that time. But man, it was so much fun. We loved doing it. So we figured if we're having fun, let's just keep doing it. And then it became like a weekly thing. We started doing shows 2 to 3 times a month, right, at the time. And it started growing, actually. And at one point, we figured, let's start trying to bring in some bigger names to draw a bigger crowd. And Christopher Daniels up here, he was the first star that we brought out, actually. And he drew us a huge house. Like, we went from, well, what would you say, 50 to 75 people to when we booked him and put him on flyers and stuff. I think he drew us 350 fans, and we were like, wow, this is growing even more. This is great. So it was a lot of fun.
And that was, of course, where Slick Nick and Mr. Instant Replay were born.
That's right.
Yes, we were singles wrestlers at the time.
I don't know what it was. Like, I just had to have a Mr. in front of whatever name. It was Mr. BYWA, and I graduated to Mr. Instant Replay. I felt like all my moves were so spectacular, you'd have to go back and rewind it and watch it again.
It turns out now that Nick is the spectacular one, and you're just the albatross around his brother's neck.
I'm just the heavy lifter.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.